What's up, everybody? Welcome to a Pre-Heresy and Codices ramble. This is going to be a update kind of intro, an update overview, really, because all the legions have been covered, but there is the need to update some, well, a good amount of them, and I just want to go over my thought process with that because I will be doing some updates. But it's going to be different from how I said it in those individual rambles. Originally, I was going to take down the video and redo it with the update in it. But to be honest, looking back at that doesn't make too much sense. Because not much really changes with the update. And the idea of the update is once a legion gets put into a Horus Heresy book from Forge World, if there's any type of name change that they had prior to being known as their name we know them as, and any type of original color scheme during the Unification era and all that they're going to show, like they did for the Salamanders and the Imperial Fist and so on. I would make mention of that and any other type of interesting quirk stuff. And really, that is a minor thing, because mostly it would be an update for models. A range of models made for that legion specifically, because Forge World is doing that for every legion. So we have the generic Astarte stuff, and then there would be legion specific stuff. And some legions were in a book but didn't have the full model support or sufficient model support at the time of doing the ramble. And other legions were not in a book at all and didn't have anything at all as well. So really it's just going to be its own update video instead of taking one down and putting it back up, because the updates really are for what Forge World does. Getting a new Space Marine Codex or a new Dark Angels Codex, for example, doesn't change much of anything at all. The Dark Angel Legion is one that needs an update and is not ready to get one yet, but the codex in question for Pre-Heresy and Codices, in which I go over the legions and give you my thoughts on the easiest and simplest way and quickest way to represent them in a 40k army list build, would still make use of the Dark Angels Codex for the Dark Angels Legion. So that doesn't really change. And redoing the entire ramble about color scheme stuff already mentioned, and the codex in question or codices in question for a particular legion doesn't make too much sense, because I would have to literally go back, re-listen to it, and kind of say verbatim what I already said. Or, run the risk of leaving something out that I did say that I liked, and I just don't remember to say it, and then repost it, take the old one down, post a new one up, and people who have already checked out the ramble are going to see basically the same thing, except for some added few minutes or so for models or any type of color scheme thing or anything like that. So instead, it'll be listed as a Pre-Heresy and Codices thing, and it'll say whatever legion update, and it'll be its own separate video in the playlist. That way you can check out what's basically established for the legions thus far, and then the update will cover more model stuff primarily. Like I said, the other quirky stuff like color scheme or name change from Unification era to Crusade and Heresy era is something I will cover as well, but it's not a guarantee like models basically are a guarantee. So I just want to reiterate, the whole concept of Pre-Heresy and Codices is to make a 40k list. You build a 40k list utilizing the 40k main rules and the codex in question to build a list that, while utilizing 41st millennium setting stuff, is representing a Heresy era force from 30k. And therefore there are certain restrictions in mind that I go over in the Legion stuff. And one of those things would be units, for example. The Contemptor Dreadnought, I make mention in the rambles already, and I should say, that there is no Contemptor in a 40k codex. And I'm not going to go over Forge World rules for stuff, because I'm looking at it so you can make your Heresy era force, collect it maybe as your only force, right? And you can able to play it in leagues and in tournaments without needing to worry about Forge World rules being allowed or not. You just have a list that can be played 100% no problem. So Contemptor Dreadnoughts would be regular Dreadnoughts if you're going to buy that model, because it's a cool looking model. So I make mention of this now because there is some stuff Forge World has put out that is cool that I won't really go into too much. I'll make some mention for particular legions, but I'm really not going to go into it too much because they don't have a 40k equivalent. Some of the new Dreadnought patterns really don't have a 40k equivalent for them. So really not going to make too much mention of stuff like that. Legion specific stuff I will, and I'll say, while this as a squad as it's sold might not be usable, for example, the Salamanders, was it Pyroclast squad or something like that, really wouldn't work as a squad, but hey, those models can be used for this or that. So I'll make mention of stuff like that for Legion specific stuff, of course. So that's the game plan with the updates. They're not going to be really, I don't foresee them going past 10 minutes at all, really. I'd be surprised if they get up to that. So they're going to be shorter than the main ramble for the legions in question, because it's just going to be updates for that legion specifically, like I mentioned numerous times already. But one thing I do want to cover here real quick is the Betrayal at Calth box set from GW, because this is GW's real kind of first go at making Horus Heresy era stuff, and I was kind of surprised it was actually a thing that came to being, because I would think they wouldn't want to undercut themselves with the Forge World sales with this, because the Betrayal at Calth is fantastic. If it was snap fit, it'd still be a great set, but the fact that, at least for the power armor and Terminator armor stuff, the 30 Mark IV power armored models and the 5 or whatever for the Terminator squad for Cataphracti are full-on kits with extra weapon options, and that's really cool. The only nitpick I've kind of seen on the internet here and there is that the bolters aren't Heresy era enough, but it works, so I don't have a problem with it personally. Anyways, I don't know about the two HQs, the Dark Apostle-esque HQ or the Terminator Captain. I don't know if they're kind of clamshell snap fit style, and I just use that as a term, but something along the lines of how the Interrogator Chaplain or the Sanguinary Priest models are, where they go together a very specific way. I don't know if they're like that, or if they're more kit-oriented like the rest of the stuff, but they look cool as well. And as they advertise and as they make mention of and kind of boast about, it can be used for any force, be it a chapter. So if you want to collect the Minotaurs, or you want to collect the Red Scorpions, or whomever, right? You could buy Betrayal at Calth and utilize all that, the entire shebang. If you wanted to buy it and paint it up purely as Ultramarines or purely as Word Bearers, you could. They show that on GW's site for the box. So there's nothing really sculpted on there that betrays them to one Legion or another, or Chaos or Imperium. So it's a really cool set for that. You have a lot of weapon options, and because it's a kit, you could, if you wanted to, fit in some bits, weapon bits you have for the power armor stuff, no problem. If there's a weapon that you want to make use of that's just not in the kit, you could do that. So that's also very cool. Obviously, you're going to get the most out of the box set if you wanted to paint out Word Bearers or Ultramarines, only because the decal sheet included, it has both of their decal stuff on there. But between what Forge World offers decal-wise and what you can find online to download and print yourself, or what you can freehand, you're basically going to have all bases covered. Now, with that said, I did some number crunching real quick, and it's actually a better deal to purchase Betrayal at Calth than it would be to purchase the Forge World specific models or specific kits from Forge World. So the Contemptor, the weapon arms for the Contemptor, the weapons for the Mark IV models, the Mark IV models themselves, the weapons for the Contemptor, not the Contemptor, but the Cataphracti Terminators, and the models for the Cataphracti Terminators themselves, and that's not including the Terminator Captain or the Dark Apostle. So definitely a good way to jump right into the heresies, purchasing Betrayal at Calth, and I just wanted to make special mention of it because it's something pretty new that I didn't have access to ramble about prior. So I want to make a mention of it here that it works for any legion. There's really a few legions, if you really do a lot of thinking and think too deeply into it, that wouldn't be able to, let's say, make the most of it as well. I mean, any Legion can use all the models. What I'm saying is things like the Iron Hands and the Space Wolves, which have a particular look that's unique, Bionic Heavy or Feral Wolf Pelt stuff, and there's some other Legions as well, really wouldn't have that feel represented well, but they can still make use of all the bits no problem. So I'm not going to update every Legion just for Betrayal at Calth. I'm going to make mention of it here, and the Legions that need an update, I'll still make a mention of it, but it'll be a much quicker mention. So that's Betrayal at Calth and my thoughts on it. I like the kit. I want to purchase it. I can't justify it for myself right now because I don't know what Legion I want to paint up. While I have some Space Marine color schemes I'm painting up, a test model still is taking forever, plus that one Lamenters, I want to do more of that, and then whatever else. I just can't justify it because if I had an army close to fruition, yeah, I could get that and supplement stuff. I really don't know what I want to do and what I want to paint up and how I want to go about it. So Betrayal at Calth is something that, should it stick around, I'll definitely eventually purchase. But even though I'm not really sure how long it's going to stick around, it looks like it should be more of a mainstay, but who knows. Anyways, that's really for Betrayal at Calth. Of course, all the generic stuff from Forge as they produce it works. But just keep in mind, I'm going to be going over the updates as it pertains to a 40k Codex Army List build. So the Heresy books from Forge World have all of the rules and stuff you need for building true Crusade and Heresy era squads, true Legion army lists. And what I'm going to be talking about is the easiest, simplest, quickest way to get into it, to represent a Legion through a 40k Codex, which is not really meant to represent a Legion. Even for the Trader Legions, it doesn't really represent the Legions on quite that scale. So that's the idea here. So I know I mentioned that in all of the rambles, but I want to really hammer it home here as well. Anyways, this has gone on, I think, long enough. So that's the current plan. There will be some Legions to come that will be getting updates. I just want to kind of set the pace and do an overview of what's going down, because it's going to be different from how I originally intended, and I think it makes more sense to do it this way. So original ramble will stay, and an update clearly labeled as such will be part of the playlist as well. Anyways, that's it. So thanks for sticking through it, and until next time, take it easy.